Hi, and welcome to the onboarding videos for Breadwinner for Netsuite. This is video number 4. How do you handle custom fields and custom objects? This is a lot more complicated just because there's so many things we might mean when we talk about custom fields and custom objects. Are they in Netsuite? Are they in Salesforce? Are we writing to them? Are we pulling from them? How are we writing to them? So we'll go over all of these and we'll go through it in this order. First, let's look at how would we pull data from NetSuite custom fields into Salesforce. And this is the most typical question and the typical request we get. Keep in mind that some of our customers are only going to use us in read-only mode, sometimes called unlimited replicate. And what that means is they're not writing to NetSuite, but they are pulling data from NetSuite because they want to see it. Now, it's over here, and this was covered in video number 1, that you're going to decide to bring in what core objects and what subsidiaries. But what about the custom fields? Well, let's go over here and click on custom fields on the left. And let's start with the transaction body fields. So with Salesforce, you might have different custom fields on different objects. But on NetSuite, this is typically more standardized into sales body fields. And sales would include estimate, sales order, invoice, and so forth. When I click this blue button to fetch sales custom fields, Breadwinner is making a call to NetSuite and saying, hey, what are all of your custom fields? This can sometimes take 30 seconds to pull in, but we're now looking at all of the custom fields in NetSuite. So let's just pick one as an example, date of taxable supply. So that's a custom field in NetSuite on the sales transaction bodies, i.e. on the estimate, on the sales order, on the invoice. And I say, you know what? When I go to the sales order, now let's keep in mind date of taxable supply. Breadwinner has arranged a lot of the standard fields up here, but you might have also brought in NetSuite custom fields already. However, well, you can see some of them there. We don't see date of taxable supply. So let's click this button. And you could, if you wanted to, create it on only some of the Breadwinner corresponding objects, but go ahead and just create it for all unless you have a specific reason not to. Create custom transaction fields. So what's happening is Breadwinner is creating a date of taxable supply field, a replicated field on the Breadwinner sales order, estimate, and invoice objects. So with Lightning, it can take a couple seconds to show up. And even when it does show up, there's one other important thing. Depending on your permissions, you may need to create and let's go through this, a Breadwinner custom fields permission. Because these are, because these are your custom fields, Breadwinner can't make a permission set for it out of the box. So this is something you'll often have to do. And you'll just need to create a custom fields permission set with whatever name you want. And then as we just created that on, for example, let's do this, sales order. That was a date of taxable supply, if I remember correctly. And I'm just going to add everything here. Once I have that saved, I need to make sure I have assigned this to all the users. And then I need to hit refresh and make sure Lightning is working. And then finally, you will see it here. Now, you might be wondering, why is this yellow? Well, we just created this field. So you might have a tremendous amount of data, historical data, and obviously we can't populate this all at once. So you could wait for the weekend at this point, but we recommend you do is to go to our troubleshooting page and restart the sales order sync. This might take some time, but once we've done that, and once we've updated this record, and the updated record date in Salesforce is greater than the date we created this field, then that yellow will go away and everything will be populated. So it does take a couple steps, but at the end of the day, it's a fairly straightforward process. And once you've done this, you never need to think about it again. And you might be wondering, well, when am I supposed to map this? How is Breadwinner going to know? Well, let's just take a look at this a little bit more. And the field we used was the date of taxable supply. Well, that's the Netsuite API field name. And this is the field name in Breadwinner, or rather, the API field name that Breadwinner has set when creating the object. And NCF, Netsuite custom field, tells us that date of taxable supply is associated with this field. Now, if you wanted to, you can change the field label for this field all you want. But because of the formatting in Salesforce by Breadwinner of the Salesforce custom API name, no mapping is needed. It's just handled by configuration. You could, if you wanted to, in theory, even create custom fields yourself, but don't bother doing it. Just use our handy wizard. That will bring in the field. And don't forget, after that, you have to make sure that the permission set has that field, that the permission set is applied, and then you either have to wait a week for us to refresh all the data, or you have to manually refresh that data. But at least we'll tell you, hey, this hasn't been updated yet. And it may take some time, hours even, until all the data is updated. Yep, still there. Okay, that's how you pull in data from NetSuite custom fields into Salesforce. What about writing data to NetSuite custom fields? Well, the first thing you really need to do is do step one. We have had customers who write to NetSuite custom fields without creating them first in Salesforce, as we just saw minutes ago. This technically works, but when the replicated object comes back to Salesforce, they don't see them and they think everything's broken. So step one, make sure that custom field is in Salesforce, and even better, manually populate it with some data just as a sanity check to say, yes, this is coming back. And then let's take a look at writing to those custom fields. If you're using the guided wizard, we'll go over how you can populate custom transaction fields. And how you can also handle the line item fields. We have a dedicated section on the custom fields. Okay, now let's take a look at number 3, pulling NetSuite custom objects into Salesforce. Let's click on NetSuite Objects. And we bring in a lot of objects by default. Those are all the objects here that are part of the managed package, and even some objects that aren't visible here. But we also bring in custom objects. This is more potentially complicated, but it still follows the same approach as the NetSuite custom field. We have a field name for the object, NCO, NetSuite custom object, and we will bring in all of the fields on that object as well. And in fact, you can even see that object here. So this is a NetSuite custom object that we are bringing into Breadwinner. Again, no field mapping or object mapping is required. Everything is handled through API name configuration. And should you want to do this yourself, we recommend you double check file case with support, but you could, in theory, just go ahead and click Create in Salesforce, and Breadwinner will take care of that for you. Okay, that was 3, pulling NetSuite custom objects into Salesforce. Writing to NetSuite custom objects depends on whether you want to use the guided wizard, or it depends on whether you want to use the API. For that, there's a sufficient level of complication. We recommend you file a case and tell us what you're trying to do, and we'll be glad to help you out with that. Okay, let's move on to the Salesforce custom fields and objects. So you want to use the guided wizard to write to NetSuite from Salesforce custom fields and objects. This is incredibly straightforward. Our guided wizard doesn't really differentiate between whether you're coming from a Salesforce standard object, such as an opportunity, a contract, a order, or whether you're coming from another managed packages custom object, or whether you're coming from your own custom object. As you may recall in the guided wizard, when you want to create from a Salesforce object, just go ahead and pick any object. It doesn't matter which one you're coming from. When you're using the API, same approach. When you are using the API to write Apex, there really isn't a difference between creating a sales order from a custom object in Salesforce or from a standard object in Salesforce or custom fields on that standard object. So just to review, you can absolutely pull in NetSuite custom fields into Salesforce using our wizard and then following up with permission sets. You can also write to NetSuite custom fields. Our guided wizard explains how to do that, and the API is the same process. You can pull in NetSuite custom objects into Salesforce. We have a wizard that will do that, and you can write to NetSuite custom objects using the guided wizard or the API. However, that is sufficiently complicated that we recommend you start that process with a support case. And dealing with Salesforce custom fields and objects, from Breadwinner's point of view, it's all just Salesforce objects, be them custom or standard. The process is the same. Okay, thank you so much.